This Livingston City Commission meeting on January 2nd, 2024. Happy New Year is called to order. Roll call, please.
Chair Newts,
Here.
Vice Chair Kale,
Here.
Commissioner Friedman.
Sit here.
Yeah, I heard it. Commissioner Schwartz,
Present.
Commissioner Lyons.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Excellent. First up on the agenda is general public comment. So individuals are reminded that public comments should be limited to items over which the City Commission has supervision, controls jurisdiction, or advisory power. So these are for items not on the agenda. I see our first taker. Welcome, Leslie Feigl.
I would like to request to you, please, one for each of you. Now we'll make sure I write my name down.
We can share for now.
Yeah. So annually, I have
Your
come
name and address, please.
Leslie Feigl, 303 Spark Street Chamber of Commerce. So sorry. So every year I've come in front of the commission and I've given you kind of an update of where we ended up between the Chamber of Commerce and the Visitor Center. And this year, with just my one staff member and I attended over 134 meetings between city, county, state, a couple of hearings in Helena, and Zoom board meetings and a very long list of others. We had over 18 events between ribbon cuttings, our annual March job fair, car show, parade, Christmas stroll, and many others. The meet and greets, that was fun. We had 7 marketing campaigns, both national and international and statewide. The fall fly fishing guide, that was a state campaign. We had a national media tourism campaign that was targeted marketing for the summer, spring and summer. And then we used USA Today for fly fishing and hunting. And that was a national campaign that was incredible. That was over 1 million copies nationally that went out. We had a targeted marketing in the UK and Germany, which then ranked, put Livingston in the top 10 for visits at our visitor center this year, which was a phenomenal, turnover there. That was just huge. Montana Television Christmas marketing for Park County. And that happened for 2 weeks prior to Christmas, marketing all of the city of Livingston and Park County's Christmas events this year. And we did 10 media interviews, Park County events, businesses, development stories, a long list of things that have went on. I spent a lot of time this year utilizing sponsorship dollars and our membership dollars to like literally the penny this year. And the last but not least is the visitor center. We had 3,696 plus visitors. We had 453 visits to the Lewis and Clark exhibit that we had for 6 weeks. We sold over 1,200 tickets for the rodeos this year. We had 2,670 phone calls that we answered at the visitor center with my 2 visitor center employees for the 3 months. And then 270 days of cleaning public bathrooms for all the visitors. So I just wanted to give you a fresh recap on what the visitor center and the chamber have been up to last year. And we'll see what this year holds with the 100-year parade. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. And we can include this in the minutes, I assume, too. Thanks. Thanks. Happy New Year, Leslie. Thank you. Anybody else like to offer public comment? We can start with people in the room. I'm going to look online. Anybody online want to offer general public comment? Not seeing any. All right, general public comments closed. Moving on to consent items. Commissioners, we have 2 consent items. Is there anything that you all would like pulled to discuss, or can I have a motion on the consent items?
I'll make a motion to approve consent items A through B.
Second.
Okay.
Motion by Kale and a second by Lyons. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next on the agenda, we have a couple of proclamations. First up is a proclamation honoring John W. Fryer. Whereas the city of Livingston lost a valued resident and community leader on December 16th, 2023, with the death of John Walker Fryer. And whereas John Walker Fryer was born on April 6, 1935. And whereas John Walker Fryer owned and operated the historic Saxon Fryer bookstore located at 109 West Calendar Street. And whereas John Walker Fryer was a pillar of the community and the keeper of Livingston's historical records, both past and present. And now therefore be it resolved on behalf of the Livingston City Commission, I, Melissa Newts, Chair, do hereby declare April 6, 2024 to be John Walker Fryer Day in the city of Livingston, Montana. Further, I encourage community members to enjoy Livingston's historic district by visiting and relishing our city's rich history on John Walker Fryer Day. Mr. Gager.
Thank you, Chair Newts. I believe April 6th is a Saturday, which sounds like a fantastic time to go and enjoy downtown Livingston, including Saxon Fryer amongst other stores. So I'll see you down there.
I want to just offer an opportunity for other commissioners. I recognize you might have something you want to say regarding this proclamation. Do any of you want to comment?
I enjoyed knowing John, especially when I worked on, with a member of the Historic Preservation Commission. And had many good conversations and whiskeys with us over the years. Thank you.
Did you want to say anything? All right. So I'm going to move on. Thank you for including this. Next up, another proclamation. A proclamation honoring City Commissioner Melvin G. Friedman. Whereas the Melvin G. Friedman was born on September 21st, 1935. And whereas Melvin G. Friedman was first elected to the Livingston City Commission on November 8, 2011. And whereas Commissioner Friedman has continuously served the city of Livingston and participated in over 250 meetings of the City Commission since taking the oath of office on January 3rd, 2012. And whereas Commissioner Friedman has honestly and honorably served the city and community while thoughtfully working to address all issues before the commission. Now therefore be it resolved on behalf of the Livingston City Commission, I, Melissa Newts, Chair of the Livingston City Commission, do hereby declare September 21st, 2024 to be Melvin G. Friedman Day in the city of Livingston, Montana. Further, I encourage community members to embody the community spirit exhibited by Melvin G. Friedman and commit to an active service to the community on this day. Mr. Gager.
Thank you, Chair Newts, and thank you, Commissioner Friedman.
I'd love for commissioners to say anything that they want to say to Mel and also give him a chance to speak also. But do you all want to start with anything that you might want to say to Mel?
Well, Mel, thank you for, before you even became a commissioner or thought about doing it, counseling me and schooling me on what to expect and helping me to show the ropes and how to act as a gentleman and stuff throughout the meetings and within the community. So thank you, Mel, for serving.
I will echo Commissioner Schwartz's sentiments. Mel, you've been a great teacher and it set a great example for a commissioner and for a community member, particularly through your service to this commission. And as all of us commissioners know, that goes beyond the commission into all kinds of boards and committees. And it's in my short tenure, it has felt like it's required an immense amount of dedication. And so I can't even imagine over the tenure that you have had, how much time, care, and consideration that you've given to the decisions that you've made on this commission, and on behalf of your fellow community members. And so I thank you and respect you for that, and we'll remember your example for the entire time that I serve on the commission. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It has been an honor to get to sit right next to you for the
Yes,
last 2
yes.
years. Thank you so much for the service that you have provided our community. Over 250 meetings, some of them that go well past midnight. How did you do that? Um, it has been an honor to sit next to you, and I thank you for the service that you've done on the commission, and I know all the other service that you've done throughout our community, throughout the years that you've lived in Livingston. And I'm proud to know you and to have sat next to you, and I've learned so much from you. And I so appreciate you, and you deserve a lovely retirement and not have to come out at all hours of the night and sit through meetings. So we appreciate you, and I hope you all the best and in your retirement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mel, the last 5 years have been a lot. And I'm really glad we've been able to do this together. I said it before and I'll say it again, that if people don't like the way Livingston's going, they have you to blame. Because you helped Quentin, you nominated me, and your kids over there in the front row who also has left her. It's not lost on me that you have a lot of people you love in the room today.
No.
And that you spend a great amount of time telling us how wonderful they are. And how they've achieved so much. And they're so smart. And they're going out and changing the world. And it's not lost on me that they're looking to you as an example of how they learn to do these things.
Thank you.
Is there anything that you would like to say?
Well, it sounded like I had to give a brief report, and I wonder if I can do that now.
You get to do whatever you want right now.
Which will answer a few questions, you know, like that. When I heard about this, I still don't believe it, so. The one thing I have to clear up right away is, my chauffeur on the left and right. In the 70s. I was in church and I was in the choir. And we started to sing, and all of a sudden, I felt a pain in my right eye. And like I've never felt before. And the director saw that when I sat down, I was not something was wrong. And he said, "No, you better get home and see what that was about." So I ran home. It really was, I think it was a Mother's Day weekend or not. She was still at home, and I was going to meet her and my daughter Lori. And I walked in and I told them what happened. And they called over to, on a Sunday, over to the medical eye service. And there happened to be somebody on duty. One of the, I think Dr. Cosgrove was on duty. Explained what happened. She said, "Get in your car right now and get the hell over here." So we did that. And from that point on was a series of unbelievable action by them trying to get the vision back and all that, and it just never happened. So fast forward, I've been operating without my right eye. And you can drive in Montana on and still have a valid license, even though we still have one eye. And I did that for a while, but then I started to think if something did happen, the liability would be, you know, he doesn't have a right eye, what the hell is he doing under? So my chauffeur and lovely wife, really, has been my anchor. And the other thing I have to say right away is the reason that I'm here is that the year this post was open, I was over to my daughter Lori's house. And she said, "Dad, you are running for the commission." That's how all that got started. And look what happened. So it's been quite a journey. I'd just like to cut off some high points if I can. We ought to go through our last manager who passed away. And I worked pretty well with him. The one thing that he did achieve, and I think we have to remember, is that he bought the building that we're in. When I joined the commission way back when, it was such a different thing. I was over at the city county building like we are now. The city manager had 3 small offices, period. No other staff. I mean, I couldn't understand how all this happened, and it never resolved itself. And it just was, and we had a much, he had an office for himself, an office for an attorney, and an office for a receptionist, period. And that's how we operated that. We met at that point a lot more with the county commissioners. We had some good resolve with them. But that's how all this got started, and I look back and we got just that much time and that much things that I've been through. The other thing is I'd like to say is that as you get older and the things that were happening to me, my wife really is how I exist. Lori and her husband Stores are responsible for bringing us here to begin with. I'll give you a short history of the kind of stuff that I did, so I'll give you an idea how I prepared for this. I graduated Syracuse University. And at the point when I had business school, didn't have an inkling for anything. I was trying to think what I was going to do after college. One of my teammates when I was in Syracuse was Jim Brown. And he happened to be one of the greatest athletes I've ever seen. He just passed away originally. I didn't like the reports I read about him. It sounded like his mind, he had a tough time at the end. But I remember just one day, I lived about a block from the school, and I went up on a Saturday morning, and Syracuse was playing Army and lacrosse, and Jim Brown was one of our key players. We beat Army and lacrosse. He went in, changed clothes, came out, and lettered in track on one day. He won 3 events. That's why I say he's one of the greatest I've ever seen. I also graduated ROTC at Syracuse. And I achieved the rank of major so far. That's the highest I've been. I had to give it up because moving so much, I couldn't keep up with the unit. And, but I was able to give a number of years in the training division, and I liked the service. The year that I graduated, the service changed policies, and they said, one of 2 things can happen. You can take some time off, but then you got a commitment of opening stuff, opening posts that you would go to. And what it took away was that if you were thinking about being regular, stay in the service, you had to take a different path. And I had a close friend who did that. He arranged it so that he fulfilled certain things early. And then he did stay in the service and got his commission that way. But I did my duty as a reservist. And I was in a number of years, and I went to training camps, and through those, that's how I got up the rank of major. And that was a big part of my life. My primary work that I did through the years was contract janitorial services of large situations. And I'll just give an example of one, and then I'll move on. Through a series of things, Relly and I met in Rochester, New York. And a heck of a long time ago. And it's been, we produced 3 children. Two girls and a boy. Lori is the youngest of the 3. Through those years that we were married, the first big thing that I tried, I was in what they call the janitorial field of large buildings, and through the maintenance of it. And that was the reason I was in Rochester, New York, where my wife Relly was. That's how we happened to meet. And I had taken a post with some cousins that I had, and the business was growing, and I was the contact man to work with the customers and make sure everything was okay. And I also belonged to a coffee club of gentlemen who met to talk about any leads of new businesses that were coming in. And had a cup of coffee, and then we'd release. And I was walking out, and a young fellow he was a headhunter. He said, "If you got a resume," I said, "I can get one together." He said, "Do that as soon as you can." I gave him the resume. And a couple of days later, he gives me a call and said, "You're going to Chicago." I said, "You know what, I'm running an operation here," and okay. About mid-morning, you're gonna take the plane, you're gonna go to Chicago. You go there and you get up into the restaurant, on the 3rd floor of the airport, and there'll be 2 men there to greet you. One man was the owner of a large janitorial service, Indiana, and that was his primary part. Then he also got a big contract where we were gonna be. And he had a headhunter with him. And what the story with him was that he bid in Illinois, in a small town as State Farm Insurance, who just put up a 1.5 million square foot main office, had a big high-rise building downtown, had satellite offices. And he was from Indiana, and he put the bid in, and he got that thing, and he put the wrong people in, and he was in trouble. And I gave them what I do, and got back on the plane and headed back home in time for business at night. And the next day I got a phone call, and the gentleman I gave my resume to, he says, "You got a job if you want it." And he messed up and hired the wrong people when he started a large contract, and he was in trouble. And I had to make up my mind if I took this. It was a big move for the family and all this kind of stuff. But that, I did take it, and it got me into the field of working with large customers, large buildings. And I got that contract straightened out very quickly. And as things go along, and I'll just give one example of what can happen to you. The gentleman that hired me was divorced from a wife and had kids. And I've been running this State Farm thing and everything, and we've been adding contracts, and it's been going very well. He kidnapped 2 kids when they divorced and went overseas with them. And I said to myself, I think we've got a problem here. And that led to the whole series of how I led my life. But I got the background, and I look back at those years as really something. So that's what got me into the field of janitorial stuff. Fast forward to everything else here. We live in Livingston. I just want to give an example of past history. This is the best commission right now, and the best experience I've had of us working together. Young, good minds, everybody is, except for Quentin. And then we had this mishap with manager. And I want to say the one thing, I'm gonna miss quite a few things, and one of them is on Monday morning of each week, there was a car outside my house at 8:30 in the morning with our city manager in it. And we would come down here, have coffee and tea or whatever and discuss it. We are very fortunate to have what we have in a person running the show. And developed a real good, good relationship. And, it was just beautiful days to be together and discuss things. He just gets it, he just gets what's going on. And I like meeting with him because he has forward thinking, he's always looking at the future. And I just, we're so fortunate. And then we put this commission together. And I thought, I think we learned how to work together, and it's been a huge part of my life, this whole thing. But that's why I needed drivers, because of my eye situation. Quentin was one of them and Carrie was the other. And I thank them for what they do. So it's been quite a ride. And I thank for this, when I still look at this thing and I can't believe what's going on. Forgive me for that. But bright days ahead for what we have continually with a very good commission and manager. And I wish a new replacement, all the luck in the world is taking a seat. And I just give a shout out and thank you for the patience with a lot of things and the things that we've been through. And I think we're older but wiser for all this, so I thank you for that. And I just wish you continued good success in the future. We've got a great city. And we've got some good things happening. It can only get better. And we're a big part of us sitting here, and I value what we do. So I thank you, thank you, thank you. And I thank my family for what they've been through and helping me as much as they do. So I yield.
So I'm gonna ask everyone to just stay seated, except for one person. We're gonna do the swearing in of the newest commissioner. And then after he's sworn in, we'll take a break because I think people will want to talk to Mel and people are gonna want to talk to James. And then we'll take a break before we come back and continue our meeting, if that works for everybody. All right. So you can look at this, but don't get up yet, Mel. You can stay
Stay
comfortable.
right there,
This is
but
your-
this is your official
That's the
proclamation.
official.
Yeah.
And I will meet Mr. Future Commissioner Willich.
The time is 9.
Okay, let's see how strong my right that's can handle your books.
Okay, ready?
I think so. So this is the swearing in of this is the swearing in of.
Oh, this is the-
Yeah, I'm gonna say something, you're gonna repeat it back to me, and when it's over, you're a commissioner.
Sweet,
You ready for this?
let's do it.
Don't press hard.
I will.
So I do solemnly swear that I will support, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States
I do solemnly swear that I will support, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Montana,
and the Constitution of the State of Montana,
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity, so help me God.
and I will discharge, hold on. And then I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity, so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Now I'll make a motion for a 10-minute break.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Do you say aye?
Aye.
So take a 10-minute break.
All right, now you can leave.
Your first vote, great.
Thank you. We're going to dinner at my daughter's house. so-
All right,
Congratulations.
congratulations for your dinner.
Oh, wow.
Well, thank you, my friend.
Yeah.
So picking back up on the agenda, we're on action item B. Whoops, election of city commission officers for 2024. Mr. Gager.
Thank you, Chair Newts. The Livingston Municipal Code stipulates that the commission will elect a chair and a vice chair at the first meeting of the year in January. So I will step back and leave it to you folks.
Thank you. Commissioners who would like to begin? Any conversation?
And I'd like to nominate Carrie Kale for chair.
Second,
And do we need to, this is just exactly like, this is an administrative function, so we don't open this to public comment, is that right?
No, this is your.
That's what I thought. Okay, I just want to make sure. Sorry, I should have asked that before. All right, so we have a motion by Lyons and a second by Schwartz for Carrie Kale as chair. Any comments?
I'll make a comment. I really appreciated, currently Vice Chair Kale's, ability in running the meetings when that duty fell onto her in the past year. And I've also very much appreciated the leadership of, current Chair Newts. And I think that we have an opportunity to kind of pass the rein and allow Vice Chair Kale the opportunity to show us her leadership style, and I'm looking forward to that. And in saying so, I very much appreciate the leadership that we've had from Chair Newts over the past 2 years.
Thank
I
you.
couldn't say it any better. I get it.
Anything else? Are we ready to vote?
I think it sounds like a logical progression.
All right, roll call please.
Chair Newts,
Four.
Vice Chair Kale,
Four.
Commissioner Willich,
Four.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Or
Commissioner Lyons.
Motion passes. Now we're gonna switch seats. Or wait, we can
Wait,
switch seats
yeah.
after, but now the meeting is yours.
Wow, that's okay.
That's how it works.
Well, first I want to say thank you to Melissa for your leadership the last 2 years. It's been incredible. And we wouldn't have gotten where we were without your leadership the last 2 years. So I really appreciate everything that you've done. And I've been honored to serve as your vice chair. So thank you. Carrie. All right, so that leaves us with the vice chair position. Any suggestion?
I make a motion to nominate Melissa Nudes as vice chair.
Second.
Any conversation? Diana?
Would you be interested in that?
I am happy to serve the community in whatever way the commission sees fit. Sitting up at the front of the room with the rest of you.
I would love it if you would take that position, so thank you for offering too. Yes. Any other conversation,
I'm
discussion,
good.
ready to vote? Roll call please.
Chair Kale,
Four.
Vice Chair Newts,
Or.
Commissioner Willich,
Four.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Four.
Commissioner Lyons.
Four.
Okay,
Alright.
so why don't we, so motion passes. Why don't we take a moment and reorganize ourselves? Shall we at this point, and I may ask you, since I'm gonna lean on you for a moment here. We're gonna need to make some chair arrangements as to where folks are gonna sit. Shall we follow the progression as we sort of had it in the past?
Up to you,
Um,
certainly. It's your prerogative.
They all put it on me last time as well. to figure out.
Okay, all right, so
Really your prerogative. I have no problem sitting where I'm at.
I would say I sort of have liked that progression of, as we've come in, we sort of slide down one.
Yeah.
So that would mean Kale, Newts, Schwartz, Lyons,
Sure.
Willich. Does that work?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm gonna say break and
I know.
musical chairs.
Dive.
Yeah.
Call
almost
that
that,
one.
right? All right. I I state your name tag?
Yeah.
Brace of things.
Do you think for the speed of the sign, see, okay, if I just use that? Okay.
Great, welcome over, neighbor.
Yeah.
Well, hello again. It's been a minute.
Stranger?
Okay, so this is a different look.
Yeah.
How's everyone's view?
We're the noisy corner of the room,
I know.
me and Quentin.
Brendan and I can't gab anymore.
Right.
Meetings are gonna go a lot quicker.
James is the chattiest, I think, actually.
Yeah, I'll do. All right, is everybody situated and comfortable?
Good to go.
Okay,
All right.
let's go ahead and continue on in the agenda this evening. And so we are going to move on to action item C, which is appointment of city commissioners to advisory boards and committees. Mr. Beechey.
Thank you, Chair Kale. The item before you this evening is much like the last, a bit of procedural work here to assign commissioners to the various boards. And there are 5 boards that were included in the staff report that we typically have a representative on. And the first of those is the newly created Consolidated Land Use Board, which is expected to meet the second Wednesday of the month at 5:30 p.m. And that seat actually was changed to a non-voting seat recently with the passage of a recent ordinance. And then we've got the City County Health Board, which I understand meets quarterly, the second Tuesday of the first month of the quarter at 5:30 p.m. That position is also non-voting. The City County Library, it's my understanding they meet the 4th Tuesday at 2 p.m. And we also have a non-voting representative there. And then on the 4th Tuesday of the month at 4:30 p.m., the Livingston Urban Renewal Agency Board meets, and the City Commission actually has a voting seat on that board. And then finally, there's the Livingston Community Trust Board, which meets as scheduled. And again, we have a voting seat on that board for the commission. So I will stand for any questions you may have.
I am going to see if we can make a correction. I've been sitting on the health board, and the county and the city commissioner on that board are voting members. Or at least that's how we proceeded. And then Commissioner Schwartz, did you say that URA is a non-voting?
Non-voting,
You're non.
unless you find something somewhere that says it is.
No,
But it's always been non-voting since I've been on it.
Okay.
I think,
My
that-
apologies.
No, that's
if I
fine.
may,
Mhm, yeah,
I think that the bylaws for each of these, I remember going over them before. And all the bylaws indicate if they're voting or voting, so we'd have to go look.
And I feel like I've looked at the health board previously. And
Yeah,
think
I
if
was voting on when I was on that. I
There was
voting.
always I think in some of the old paperwork that I looked at, it said non-voting, but then I found voting, and so
I'll confirm that.
That would be great.
Yeah.
that would be helpful, be awesome. Okay, so I thank you for that. Certainly we have folks who have been on boards previously or through the last year. Commissioner Lyons, you've been sitting on the planning board, which would now be the Consolidated Use Board. Like I said, I've been sitting on the Health Board. Commissioner Schwartz has been on the URA. And then I was also sitting on the Livingston Community Trust Board. Commissioner Nudes, you're on the Tree Board, which we don't have anymore. And then Commissioner Friedman had been on the Library Board. I guess I'll sort of put it out for discussion, maybe starting with folks who are on their current boards. Folks feeling like they need to change. Are they happy where they're at? Commissioner Lyons, maybe we'll start with you.
I would be happy and honored to be the inaugural non-voting commissioner on the City Consolidated Land Use Board.
I'd be happy to see them. with this experience and stuff like that. His
This man.
background suits that board very, very well.
Any thoughts about Commissioner Lyons on the land use board? Anyone else?
I think it's a good fit.
That's me.
Yeah, I have no problems with it.
Okay. Um. I've been sitting on the health board. I'm happy to stay there. But I would also say if someone else is feeling very, like they really want to be there, that I would switch around a little bit potentially if folks are there. We'll have the library board as an open seat, obviously. Commissioner Schwartz, what about you on URA? What are you?
I'm happy to stay on board unless somebody has a passion or desire to do it. To be on that board.
And then the community trust is just, there's not a whole lot of work there. You sort of show up when some grants, it's a granting board. And so that they sort of schedule that at whim. So there's that's the only sort of difficulty with that board. Vice Chair Newt,
Yeah, I
what
just,
do you think? Where are you at? On
so
the
I have a conflict with the library board. My spouse is the library director, so I would not, the board is his boss. I would not want to be on that board, nor should I be on that board. My work schedule really makes it so the only meetings that would be easy for me would be the 5:30 meetings.
Mhm.
And since Commissioner Lyons, if you decide that you want him on the land use board, then that would just leave the health board for me. The other ones would be, I wouldn't be able to make those meetings.
Commissioner Willich. Do you have thoughts about where you would be comfortable sitting?
I have no qualms with any of these boards.
Okay.
I'll take whatever open spot is available for me. I'll defer to the experienced commissioners to take their spots. But I'm happy to be on any, so.
Okay. Well, Commissioner Willich, could we pencil you then in for the library board?
You bet.
Okay.
I hear the director's great.
I know.
Yeah.
Let me know.
Not a bad fellow. I've been on that board. I like that.
Sorry to interrupt there.
No, it's good. I think we're all.
Mhm.
So. Vice Chair Newt, would you like to be on the health board? So the one thing that I will say, honestly, is that trust board is not a whole lot going on there. But the meetings are weird, so I'm happy to take both if you want a break, because you've been working your butt off as the chair. But if you would like to be on the health board, I would gladly hand that over to you too.
I'm happy to be on the health
Okay,
board.
perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So that would leave us with Lyons on the land use board, Newts on the health board, Willich on the library board, Schwartz on the URA, and then that would leave me, Kale, on the Livingston Community Trust Board. Any more discussion on this? Are we comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable with that.
Do we need to vote?
I think a motion would be appropriate if
Okay,
I'll make a motion to appoint Commissioner Lyons to the Consolidated Land Use Board. Myself to Urban Renewal Agency, Commissioner Schwartz. To the City County Board of Health, Commissioner Newts. To the City County Library Board, Commissioner Willich. And Commissioner Kale to the Livingston Community Trust Board.
Second.
all right, we have a motion by Schwartz and a second by Newt. Any more conversation? All right, roll call please.
Chair Kale,
Four?
Vice Chair Newt,
Four.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Four.
Commissioner Lyons,
Four.
Commissioner Willich.
Four.
Motion passes. All right, Moving on to action item D, appointment of Liz Zink to the Livingston City Police Commission. Mr. Gager.
Thank you, Chair Kale. The item before you is my recommendation to reappoint Liz Zink to the Police Commission. Ms. Zink has served on the commission since 2009, and as you recall, the commission really has two primary functions: interviewing and grading applicants for employment in the police department, and then acting as a trial board in situations involving violations of rules and regulations, again, by a sworn law enforcement officer. And the three-member commission had two commissioners that were appointed this time last year. And so the third, who again has been there since 2009, her term has come up, and I will say in my dealings with Ms. Zink, she has proven herself to be not only a dedicated public servant, but also somebody who's very knowledgeable in the field of policing, and takes an approach that is, you know, I would say both respectful and considerate of victims, offenders, officers, and really the whole community. So I think that her work over the years, whether as a victim advocate or doing parole and pre-release work up in the city of Great Falls, has prepared her for this. And so I will stand for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions?
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that it's reappointment. I go, I know she's on that. I didn't know she was off, but yeah, I agree with everything you said, Grant. Yeah, wonderful choice, and I'm sure she's been doing it for a number of years now. So I yield.
Clarifying questions from any other commissioners? No? Stand for a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept city manager's recommendation to reappoint Liz Zink to the police commission.
Motion by Lyons, or excuse me, motion by Schwartz and second by Lyons. Let's go ahead and open it up to any public comment. You can start in the room. Anyone in the room like to make any public comment? Appointment? Seeing none, we'll go online. Anyone online like to make public comment for the appointment of Liz Zink to the police commission? I don't see anyone, so we'll go ahead and close public comment. Commissioner discussion. Any discussion or further comment?
Doing the job since 2009. It's a long history, you know, it's travel history at least for the city, so. Yeah, it's good reappointment.
You had
I was
a
gonna
look.
say, I was just gonna say, thank you to Liz Zink for reapplying and for her service to the community.
I'll second that. All right. We're ready to vote?
Sure.
Okay, roll call please.
Chair Kale,
Four.
Vice Chair Newts,
For,
Commissioner Schwartz,
Four.
Commissioner Lyons, or Commissioner Willich.
Motion passes. Thank you to Liz. Action item E. Purchase order 20058 with Zoll for heart monitors. Mr. Gager.
Thank you, Chair Kale. The item before you is a purchase order for 2 heart monitors and associated equipment that will go and be put into service if procured. And the 2 first out ambulances for the fire department. Our existing heart monitors are nearing the end of their useful life, and the team has experienced some occasional hiccups with the equipment that we have, nothing that has threatened anyone's life or created a dangerous situation, but we are recognizing that this proactively would be a good time for us to bring in some new heart monitors, given the conversations we've had with the manufacturer and their recent software update performance. So I would stand for any questions you may have.
Commissioners, any clarifying questions?
I have a quick question.
Commissioner Welch?
Is this Zoll manufacturer, is this are we currently using this manufacturer? Or is this a different manufacturer that we're going to?
That's an excellent question. We are currently using Philips heart monitors.
Second question, I guess, is there training included with these for the new AEDs? Or is that a separate, I guess, agreement?
There is training included in the purchase, and in fact, our staff has already demoed out some of the monitors and received some training that way. They found these monitors to be of the highest performance. There are more or less 3 different large manufacturers of heart monitors in the country, and so we went through a process and evaluated the 2 that we're not currently using, and this was the one that was preferred by the duties.
Anything else, Commissioner Welch?
No, I yield.
Any other questions?
I have one. What's the expected lifespan of these?
It's my recollection that we've gotten almost 8 years out of the current monitors.
Thanks.
And so, we were hopeful that we would get at least that out.
Thank you. I yield.
Any other questions? Stand for motion.
I'll make a motion to approve purchase order 20058 and authorize the city manager to sign.
Second.
A motion by Newt and a second by Lyons. We'll open this up to public comments. Anyone in the room like to make comments on the purchase of heart monitors? All right. Seeing none, we'll go online. Anyone online like to make a comment? Right, group tonight. All right, we'll go ahead and close public comments. Commissioner discussion?
I'm here.
I'll just say that I appreciate that, staff have had an opportunity to test them out already, and I don't know how we would know better than those who have like put their hands on to these monitors, so I appreciate the effort that went into the selection. So.
I had a significant other that worked in this field for a very long time. And Zoll and 3M always seems to be the top manufacturers. So I think that this seems like a good purchase. And certainly that's certainly something that we want to keep up on and make sure that the equipment is working properly. So thank you for thinking of it. Any other comments, questions, concerns? All right, roll call, please.
Chair Kale,
4.
Vice Chair Newt,
4.
Commissioner Schwartz,
4.
Commissioner Lyons,
Or
Commissioner Willich.
Motion passes. Action item F. Ordinance 3046, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, amending chapter 30 zoning of Livingston Municipal Code by altering section 30.40, section 30.41, section 30.43, and section 30.51 as they relate to accessory dwelling units, 2-family dwellings, and multiple family dwellings. Mr. Gager.
Thank you, Chair Kale. The item before you folks this evening is one that we have discussed at an advisory level in December, and it stems from state mandated changes to local zoning ordinances. And I will introduce our planning director, Jennifer Severson, to kind of run through the ordinance. But I will say the vast majority of these changes are prescriptive and required by state statute. As the director pointed out in her staff report, there was one deviation from that, and that was kind of the genesis of a conversation that we had with you folks related to ADUs and their applicability to multifamily homes, or if they should be limited to single family homes. I believe 4 out of 5 commissioners felt that they should be limited to single family homes. We, subsequent to the conversation here, had a conversation with the zoning commission earlier in December, and they largely concurred with your thoughts. And so we have incorporated that, but I will step out of the way and let Director Severson take it from here.
Good evening. Welcome. This is going to be very, very brief. If you could pull up the PowerPoint, it's like 3 slides. As Grant mentioned, these. Oh, yeah, sorry. As Grant mentioned, these are the vast majority are state mandated. So they're related to multifamily dwellings, accessory dwelling units, and duplexes or 2-family dwellings. Our ordinance already had some elements of the requirements passed by the legislature, so we had to tweak our ordinance. So for the purpose and summary of these updates, you can slide 2, please. These are required to comply. There were 3 laws passed by the 2023 legislature that required us to update our ordinance to comply with them. SB 245 is related to multifamily, and for this particular bill, it means 5 or more dwelling units per structure. Multifamily residential is allowed in all commercial districts. Currently, all of our commercial zones already allow multifamily 5 or more, except for neighborhood commercial. It does not allow for any residential developments. And the updates to our code would make it so that mixed use, not simply residential, but the mixed use with the residential component of 5 or more units is now allowed in neighborhood commercial as well as everywhere else. For Senate Bill 323, this is related to duplexes or 2-family dwellings. Duplexes are allowed anywhere a single-family residential dwelling is allowed. That's SFR on here. Already, all our other zones allow duplex development where single-family residential is allowed. Now they will be allowed in R1 and the RMO, the residential mobile home park, or the mobile home development district, and then the R1 is the low density residential district. So again, our code allowed this in a lot of areas. We just had to make it so that it's in all of them that allow any single family residential. And then Senate Bill 528, accessory dwelling units or ADUs are allowed anywhere that single family residential is allowed. This is already allowed in our code, which is why we came to you guys for some policy direction back in November. The other thing that this bill did was it limited the restrictions that the city can place on ADUs. So it removed the requirements for 1 off-street parking space per ADU. We can no longer require off-street parking. It removed the requirements of impact fees, even though we were waiving 50% of the impact fees for an ADU. We can no longer charge any impact fees. And then the design element, it's something that we did not require anyway. I think some cities required that the ADU be architecturally similar to the primary residence. That is not something that we required before, but now we can't, even if we wanted to. As far as the ADU for each single family residential, based on your policy direction, what we brought to the zoning commission in December basically limited the ADU as being applicable only to single family residential structures. They asked us to put some language that's on the next slide in there, additional to what we had, to make it very clear that not only does it not apply to 2-family or duplexes and multifamily dwellings, it also does not apply to townhomes or condominiums. So it this language should cover and ensure that ADUs are allowed only to tie to single-family residential primary units. And then the last slide is just that I went over in your staff report. These are the criteria in Montana Code annotated for zoning regulation changes. I went through in my staff report and evaluated each of these criteria, but I am happy to answer any questions or go over them with a little more detail if you would like.
Commissioners, clarifying questions? Commissioner Lyons?
On page 70. And I'm not sure if this relates to existing zoning ordinance or if this is new, if the strike through kind of tells me that it's new, but I have a question. It says that for neighborhood commercial, only the following residential uses are allowed. A single residential unit may be established within a commercial building to allow living space for a business owner, et cetera. Is that new language?
That is actually old language, and I'm kind of seeing, oh, we missed something here. So already, we do allow that one residential unit within a commercial building in neighborhood commercial, if it is for the business owner. The additional language that's supposed to be on, and it looks like somehow it got cut off. But structures that the new code is supposed to read, structures that include a minimum of 5 residential units with mixed uses are also allowed
In neighborhood commercial?
in neighborhood commercial. I'm not, do you see
So, yeah, if I could point to your attention,
something that?
the old language regarding neighborhood commercial actually appears on the top of page 71 in what was footnote number 2.
Yep.
So that language has been bumped up to footnote number 1. And then it's very, very subtle, but in footnote number 1, after only the following residential uses are allowed, there is a colon. And then there's and there is a semicolon later. And so there are 2 types of residential uses allowed in the neighborhood commercial as drafted. The first is a single residential unit established in a commercial building to allow living space for the owner. And the second is structures that include a minimum of 5 residential units. And there is no, as written, no mixed use requirement for those 5 plexes.
Okay,
Hopefully that.
that's right. You're right, because we already allowed the commercial use. Okay, sorry.
So I'm gonna do my best to describe how I understand this. So in neighborhood, and this is from existing code.
The first part is, so if you go over to page 71, you
Yeah.
see at the top, the strike through. We rearranged it because it didn't make sense that it was all over the table for the footnotes. So I tried to put them in order that they are in the table. So it was a little cleanup job, but the language that, a single residential unit may be established within a commercial building to allow living space for a business owner, that was already in our code.
Okay.
It's struck through 171, moved up to number 1. And so that's still there, but we lumped it under, now we're allowing to use the new one of structures that include a minimum of 5 residential units. Those are also residential units that are allowed. So now we have 2 residential uses that are allowed in neighborhood commercial.
But in neighborhood commercial,
Mhm.
there can be a commercial building with 1 residential unit that must be occupied by the owner of the building,
A business owner.
a business owner. Does that business owner does that business owner have to be associated with that building in any way?
I means a business in the building, but I don't think we have it defined as the property owner. To me, it would make more sense and be a little more flexible to allow it to be an owner of the business in the building at that time.
Okay, and then there can't be 2 residential units, 3 residential units, or 4 residential units, but there must be, so it's 1 or 5 or more.
Yes, and the one has to be tied to a business owner.
Right.
Yes, correct.
I will save my thoughts on that for later.
Okay.
Um, but I also recognize that that's kind of like part of existing code that we're maybe not talking about here.
So currently, we don't allow for other than that one residential unit in the commercial building to allow for the business owner. Other than that, there is no residential development that is allowed in the neighborhood commercial district right now.
Okay, so, I mean, it's pertinent to the discussion.
Yes.
So we're in clarifying questions. I'm not gonna share what I think about that,
Okay,
my ideas on that.
just a reminder, that right there is the state mandated language,
That's what I was.
So the five.
5 or more.
Yeah. Okay.
That is,
That
that is,
that's
at
really
at
helpful.
least that. There is flexibility if this commission were to say, well, what do we think about the 2, the 3, and the 4? But right now, the state's minimum requirement is the 5 or more.
Great, that's really, really helpful clarifying. Thank you so much, Director Severson. And then could you explain to me on page 76, there's this use and space required table?
Yeah.
And for the ADU,
Mhm.
it says no space required.
Correct.
And could you kind of like explain how that works mechanically for you as a planner?
Mechanically, I don't know for me as a planner, but I suspect that for some others, it may create a headache. We are going to continue to urge people and strongly recommend that they provide an off-street parking space if they have an accessory dwelling unit. Up until the state changes, we did require 1 off-street parking space per accessory dwelling unit. We no longer can do that. The purpose behind the state's new laws are to try to provide some incentives for more housing, obviously.
Yep.
And so not requiring that off-street parking space. It's supposed to make it easier for somebody to be able to put one in. Everybody that I have talked to, quite a few people have been inquiring about ADUs. I've been letting them know since, I think, October, when we kind of figured out what was going to be the situation here. What the requirements are now versus what they would be after January 1st, which is when the state kicks in. Like, so if somebody came in today, we already would have to say no parking requirement. But I have been strongly urging everybody to consider the convenience for their tenants as well as their neighbors on the street. So.
Great. I will just admit that I was reading this table wrong and I thought space required. I thought we were talking about the space of the lot.
Oh,
And the fact that you needed no space for an ADU was confusing for me.
parking, sorry, yeah.
No, it's not your fault. I could have gotten there if I had been a little more careful. So, that's all for my questions. Thank you so much, Dr. Stevenson. I yield.
Other commissioners, clarifying questions? Mr. Gager, I'm gonna ask you, I wonder if we may have some changes that are brewing, just from some of the discussion. I wonder if we should open up public comment before we do a motion, and if that seems appropriate.
It might very well be appropriate, especially given land use and yes.
Commissioners, are you okay if we open up to public
Sure.
comment first?
Yeah.
before we-
Can I just ask one clarifying question,
Absolutely, please.
actually? This is sort of piggybacking off of Commissioner Lyons and the one unit and 5 units.
Mhm.
Can you offer some insight on how this recommendation came in here, and the director talked about 2, 3, and 4. So I'm curious, like, why this and not something else? Just like the staff perspective of bringing this to us.
Yep, absolutely. So just kind of to reiterate, what the director mentioned, the 1 unit allowed in a neighborhood commercial building for a business owner was pre-existing under Livingston Municipal Code. So we didn't make any changes there. The state mandated that 5 or more plexes are allowed in all commercial zones. And so it seemed, when we reviewed legislative intent and what was discussed, the goal for neighborhood commercial at the time appeared really to have it be a commercial district and not a residential district. And so, while the state mandated that 5 plexes or more be allowed in that district, that didn't necessarily seem to comport with the legislative intent of the Livingston City Commission when we adopted these zoning district definitions and regulations over the years. And so, throughout this process, the director and I, and others, had a lot of conversations about really trying to respect the apparent legislative intent of the Livingston Municipal Commission. And quite honestly, that is why we had the discussion in early December about allowing ADUs for multifamilies or single families, again, because that change for multifamilies seemed like it was, you know, in contravention to your legislative intent again. So that was the thought process behind not expanding those number of residential units allowed in the commercial neighborhood commercial district. But that is, as the director pointed out, that certainly is something that is within your purview as the city commission. If you would like to expand residential to neighborhood commercial, part of what we also considered was the highway commercial allowance for residential that has caused a little bit of confusion or consternation in the last year or so that we've been here. So a wordy answer, but I hope that captured it for you.
Yes, I do have like a follow-up question on this. I'm trying to understand the major difference between with the changes of neighborhood commercial because of the state changes. I'm trying to understand the difference between neighborhood commercial and mixed use functionally now. Like what the major differences between those two. Do you have an easy summary?
You know, I would say that, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, director, but the main difference between those districts at this point is single family residential and 2-family residential as allowed uses in mixed use. There are some differences in allowable commercial. But I guess if I were to look at the 2 districts, that is the
key difference.
difference that jumps out to me.
Where it might be some things like churches and schools allowed in neighborhood commercial that wouldn't be a special permit or a special process, right? Otherwise, functionally, the difference is largely highway commercial allowing things that like drive-throughs and other uses, which we didn't even talk about highway commercial. Okay, thank you. I yield, yeah.
Commissioner Lance.
Thank you. That, thanks Vice Chair Newts for pointing that out, and that actually highlighted for me that I'm actually seeing in this table now that under neighborhood commercial, accessory dwellings are not permitted for this table. And my understanding of the legislation is correct. Any zone that allows residential must also allow ADUs.
Yes, with the exception that actually the specific language of the bills limits the ADU, or, you know, the ADUs are only tied to single family homes in the
Right.
bill. And so because there are single family residences are not allowed.
Oh,
In
and we went through that by saying that we had decided in our discussion earlier to only allow the ADUs with single family.
Yeah.
Which I disagreed with, but we've crossed that. bridge
The
already.
residential dwelling in the commercial building that was already allowed is not considered a single family residential
Right, no, I understand that, thank you,
for purposes of this.
appreciate it. So, that's all, I yield. Thank you.
Any other clarifying questions? So if we're comfortable, I'm gonna open it up to public comment first. Bit of the rest, okay. So any public comment in the room? Come on up to the podium. And. Thank you, ma'am. Anyway, folks will sign in and give their name and address for the record, please. Leave a timer.
Good evening, commissioners. Happy New Year and welcome to Commissioner Village. My name is Catherine Daly. I reside at 520 South 9th Street here in Livingston, and I'm here commenting on behalf of the Park County Housing Coalition, which is a project incubated by the HRDC. And mainly I'm just here to reflect on the value that accessory dwelling units could have to our community members. That is one of the priorities of the Housing Coalition this year, is advancing ADUs. We support them because they're more affordable to build and to rent. Typically, construction costs are lower than new single or multifamily homes. They don't require the acquisition of land. They can be developed with littler upfront subsidies or ongoing subsidies. And they can create opportunities for low and moderate income households to live in otherwise unaffordable neighborhoods. They can also generate rental income and increase property values for homeowners. And smaller homes are less to heat and cool, or energy efficient typically. They're also appropriate in size and scale. So these typically smaller homes meet the needs of Park County smaller households. They're most commonly 1 to 2 people. And smaller homes accommodate people at all stages of life and can allow for aging in place, which we know is a priority. They can also be designed with universal design features that are accessible to people with varying levels of mobility. Very importantly, they can contribute gentle density to the fabric of existing neighborhoods, which I understand is something that's important to the commission, and they can help diversify our community's housing stock. Research published in November by the Harvard Joint Center for Housing Studies found that removing regulatory barriers is critical to enabling the production of accessory dwelling units. So this step is very important, and I commend the city of Livingston for already having an ordinance that facilitates the creation of ADUs and for updating it promptly to align with state requirements. The Harvard study found that changing regulations alone, however, is not enough. There are 2 key additional barriers that must be addressed to foster the development of this housing type, and that is increasing homeowner awareness of ADUs. So I hope we are all talking about them and learning about them, and creating financing options to help folks build the ADUs that they want on their property. The Park County Housing Coalition is working to address these additional barriers. And thank you again to the city for taking care of this very critical one. That's all I have.
Thank you, Catherine. Anyone else in the room? Any public comment in the room? All right, we'll go online. Anyone online have public comment? Ask one more time. Feel free to come off mute. Quiet room tonight.
It's on the screen, it's frozen.
I know. So, okay, we'll go ahead and close public comment. Commissioner discussion. First, I'd like to, I think I'm just gonna briefly thank Catherine for her comments and hope that Catherine, you'll bring back information from the Housing Coalition about any of the work that you're doing around ADUs, particularly about financing or other ways that we can encourage folks to build them or get into them. So please keep us updated. So thank you for your comment. Discussion.
I'll start.
Commissioner Lyons.
So I think my comment is pretty predictable given my question. I'll start by saying, I'm uncomfortable with the language of the single unit in neighborhood commercial. I'm on page 70. The single unit, being living space only for a business owner, that basically just restricts the utility and kind of, it restricts the utility of that residential space when we're in a situation that we're all aware of a lack of housing options. So I don't like that it has to be connected to the business owner. And then in hearing that we have, that this allows for 1, and then not 2, not 3, not 4, and then 5 and greater. I think that a mixed use, commercial oriented building that has 5 or more residential spaces is probably pretty likely to be built in a context like Bozeman or Kalispell, with, you know, already have high levels of density, have market conditions that facilitate the building of much larger mixed, I'd call that a mixed use development. But to expect that the market is there in Livingston, I think is maybe I don't think that reflects where we are. But I could maybe see the smaller end, like 1 or 2 or 3. And so I think that if we omit that option of 2, 3, or 4, we're really saying market, just wait until we get to Bozeman levels of density and demand. And I think that isn't, I don't think that that's the intent. And I think that we can, if we allow kind of that middle ground, we can allow the development community to kind of get their feet wet with that style of development and see if that's, you know, produces a viable product. And so I think that it would make sense that we don't leave out the 2, 3, and 4 unit. I think that I made my point in November, whenever the last meeting was, about ADUs with structures other than single family homes, so I won't make that again. But I think that leaving this middle ground off the table really means that it's not going to have an effect, and it might actually suppress the market until the market catches up to that level of density and market demand of 5 residential unit mixed unit development. So my feeling is that we should include 1 or more residential units in a commercial development in neighborhood commercial. I yield for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Other commissioners, Commissioner Welch?
Yeah, I guess one of the concerns that I have about what looks like essentially a wholesale doubling of property, or I guess of density in the residential areas, is not so much in new construction where things are going to be sized appropriately for ADUs, but I'm talking about neighborhoods that haven't been sized for ADUs. This is water in and sewer out. And that as we add slowly more and more required capacity, that the infrastructure is going to have a major upgrade and downstream of wherever these ADU units are added in. And I just want to make my point about it, that we're going to have to keep an eye on these things as they happen in the older neighborhoods, maybe not so much with the newer neighborhoods that are designed for it, but these older neighborhoods, turning a garage, which previously had 0 water consumption, into a ADU, you and presumably all of your neighbors have also added that. And so we're going to put a lot of extra strain on our already strained infrastructure, underground infrastructure. Just something to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Other commissioners?
Tori does have a very good point there. I like that. I didn't think about it in terms, until he explained it, but it's forward thinking, and if we're gonna encourage or foster this, I'd like to see that added. Since, we're allowing going from 1 to 5 and nothing in between. I'd like to see 2, 3, and 4 included. Other than that, the state is, you know, these are mandates, we're mandated, and, there's not a whole lot we can do, except, as Jennifer said, Severson, educate, you know, people that are looking to do an ADU and stuff like that. I yield.
Thank you. Vice Chair News? Yeah. Can we see a map, a zoning map? So we have a better idea of where we're talking about in town? Please.
Absolutely. My apologies for not having this pulled up. Yeah, could reasonably expected this
It's
question.
good, we'll all learn how to
Yeah,
navigate. through
I
the
was just
zoning map.
thinking like, everyone's gonna know how to get there, which is perfect.
I'm super predictable when it comes to maps, aren't I?
Assuming I did it graphics. So that's the website.
It's like the worst page to load though, in my experience. Zones. One of the best maps.
If you got a quicker route.
That's what you were gonna
I was gonna say, I know you
It's
know.
not, well, no, I have it linked on my computer because it's not where you think it is. And it's on. Site. Um. No, well, that's Park County, Colorado, it's the second. So just- All right, I think it's better for Mr. Hasbro, just- Yeah, it's called. Or I can pull it up on my laptop real quick and you can just put it in.
That won't work, which the,
Oh.
Zoom call. So. Again, my.
Just have this one.
I will say it's two very small areas.
Well,
We have-
Mr. Gager, while you're doing that, I have a question. Do you mind if I ask?
Please.
Jen Severson a question? Or either both of you? Is that okay?
Well,
While we're,
I still have more questions,
Yeah,
but you
but
should go, yeah.
because I'm wondering if it's more clarification.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the bottom of page 70. In that one section, in number 1, where Commissioner Lyons Barber was talking about the single residence in a commercial building for a business owner. And then there was a semicolon, and then it says structures that include a minimum of 5 residential units. Talking about 2 different things, like a 5-plex and then a building with businesses and
Hmm.
1 or more residents. That's,
So the first part is what is already allowed, so go back to before this bill, before the state legislature. The only residential development we allowed in neighborhood commercial was a single unit in a commercial building occupied by a business owner.
okay.
The new addition to meet the state's minimum requirements that are actually already in place right now, is the 5 or more residential units in a mixed use building.
Okay. In a mixed use building.
Yes.
Okay.
It's actually not an mixed use building. It can be just.
It could be just a 5-plex.
Oh, that's right, we already allowed, sorry, we already allowed
Okay, that's what I was trying to get my head
Okay.
wrapped around, so,
residential dwelling that mixed use developments, okay, sorry.
okay, so 1 could be a commercial buildings, okay, with. Businesses and 1 resident, and the other is a standalone residential structure.
Yeah, which I wasn't actually clear on. I was confused on that. And so I think that we should have a discussion of, are we talking just residential
Mhm.
development? Or are we talking commercial slash residential or otherwise make about. Do we apply that from one up, or are there like cutoffs, or are we talking about two different things? Are we talking about mixed use development?
Okay. We'll go back to that. Perfect. Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Newt. Mr.
So,
Gager.
yes, Vice Chair needs and Director Severson, please jump in if I misspeak. The primary areas of neighborhood commercial in the city of Livingston include out by the intersection of Front Street and Star Road. There is the city-owned parcel as well as several other parcels there that are zoned mixed-use commercial, or excuse me, neighborhood commercial. And then there is a small area off of Bennett Street at the corner of Garnier, I believe, that also. And
KPRK, I believe.
and that's, I was actually looking at this area out here on the
Yeah.
east end of town, leading up to the river, that also appears to be neighborhood commercial as well. And if I may, coming to you folks, very likely, maybe not the next meeting, but the one after that, we will talk about a map amendment related to the RY timber property annexation. The staff recommendation was to zone that neighborhood commercial. And that was accepted by the zoning commission at their meeting several Mondays ago. And so, part of the thought in that staff recommendation to the zoning commission to zone that property as neighborhood commercial was really related to its proximity to the river. And while everything else around there is zoned highway commercial for the most parts, the allowance of residential of all types and highway commercial, the proximity to the river, some points in the growth policy encouraged staff to recommend neighborhood commercial, really because of the lack of residential allowances on this parcel that is on the river. So that is some added context for you folks as you contemplate this evening.
So, I'll come back to that. I want to get back to the map first. So the one furthest to the west is that city property. It's being rented.
As well as some other private
Yeah.
properties as well.
Okay. And then there's a tiny little square around 7th and Chinook Street, just above the P. It's just above that fork in the railroad.
Hmm.
Go further west,
Yep.
right there, bam, that's that Zack's Barbecue, I think, up by the school. And then there is a neighborhood commercial just off Calendar, and what street is that?
That's actually this building.
This
here,
building,
and
great.
It's actually miszoned. This zoned as a public. It's not accurately reflected.
Okay,
I
sorry.
thought this map is a little,
I
we're working.
was misreading where Park Street was on that map. And then the one northeast near Bennett Street, that's undeveloped. Is that correct?
It is,
You can
it
zoom
is
in a little
correct.
bit.
Yeah,
If you zoom in, it'll
I'm
switch the
passing
area.
the test of Livingston.
and we actually
Development.
own two of those lots, or one
Right.
of those lots in that. Yes.
And then what is the dotted line through the K Park property? Why is that like, does that mean something?
It's an overlay district.
Yes.
What's the overlay?
It was irrelevant to KPRK simply because they are keeping the same building.
Mhm.
But if any new buildings come in, there's some design guidelines for the way that the structures are facing their proximity to the street, parking in the back, that kind of thing.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, and so then the mixed use, which we didn't talk about, that's pretty new for Livingston. So that's northeast up by Bennett Street also.
And
And it's, can you scroll up a little bit? Just so we can see the whole thing, if you don't mind, I'm sorry, thank you. So the P is public because it's all city, it's the water reclamation facility. And then it's across the street from Brookstone, correct? So Brookstone is on the west by the R3.
That is correct.
And it's zone mixed use, but it's largely sort of R1, R2 density. Is that right?
correct.
That is
I
correct, yeah.
think isn't that where we have a 14 units that were just approved and they're in building right now.
Okay, so there's some density coming in there, but it's largely low density now. And then the other one is, can you help me remember? I get a little confused in the Albertsons part of town. There's one that's like
Well,
southwest.
actually, the one for sale.
Yeah, so that the property here, and I'm pulling it up,
Yeah.
that is labeled as mixed use is currently used in part as a RV court trailer park, seasonal, not mobile
Behind
home.
Matt's needs.
And it's, yes, there's the,
Thank you.
there's the hotel that's right there.
Okay, I was on the wrong side of the interstate, thank you. So that's one that was recently, they recently asked to be annexed, okay. And then you mentioned that RY was, for some reason I was thinking it was light industrial, but it's not. The recommendation wasn't light industrial, it was neighborhood commercial.
I misspoke. We did recommend light industrial because of. the
Yes,
existing
because it was,
uses.
yes,
Yes, my
correct.
apologies for that.
No,
So
Yes.
There
to,
were two annexations that happened around the same time and two zoning.
no, and I didn't catch it, sorry.
And
Light industrial. was
where's
the
Sean? I read it in
recommendation.
the paper. I remember reading in the paper, Sean, if you're on.
Yeah.
I think that's where I remember seeing the zoning meeting, right?
That is
Right, you were
correct.
correct.
And I apologize for speaking.
No, but it was perhaps part of the conversation with the,
To steer residential away from.
right?
Mhm.
Okay, I'm just trying to remember. Thank you. Okay,
I didn't even catch it.
so I'm curious about this. I appreciate staff's intention to respect legislative intent, and also I appreciate that like many of these things probably happened over a really long period of time. I'm curious if you happen to know, not a test, if you don't know, that's okay. When this regulation went into place that Commissioner Lyons has brought up about the single resident unit needing to be occupied by a business owner, is that like a newer one or pretty old? Do we have any idea?
Off the top of my head, I am not certain, but I could probably figure it out relatively quickly.
I think neighborhood commercial came into being in either 20 or 21, and I'm pretty sure that came into being that footnote at the same time.
20 or 21 neighborhood commercial?
No,
That was mixed use, I thought
Yeah.
that came
Yeah.
in.
Mixed
Yeah,
use,
we
yeah.
can, the quickest way would be for us to just review the ordinances in that section of code, but that
Well,
it
Most of
might
it
be a
would be-
cumbersome process.
well, I'm just trying to get a sense of time and respecting legislative intent of previous commissions, but also respecting that like if this happened 20 years ago, that was a commission facing different circumstances and a community facing different circumstances than today's community. So that's why I'm asking. So I wouldn't be mad if we took like a break, if it's easy for them to find, but I have more questions in the meantime to ask. If I still have more.
I'm gonna go ahead and see if, are you gonna see if they're
Okay.
linked?
Do you want me to continue my questions?
Mr. Nader,
I'm-
are you okay if she continues in your
Absolutely.
searching?
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
go ahead.
The other, to Commissioner Willich's point, I appreciate this is something that I heard knocking on doors, particularly in older neighborhoods this year. Is the concern about, are we as a community remembering to invest in existing neighborhoods that have deteriorating infrastructure? And at the same time, holding space for the reality that Livingston doesn't want sprawl, people in Livingston don't want sprawl. And also keeping in mind that it's cheaper to upgrade existing infrastructure, like to repair pipes in the street and improve them, rather than building new pipes that extend miles out of town. So like holding space for all of that, knowing that overall for taxpayers and for the intent of the growth policy, I think it still makes sense to think about existing neighborhoods and EDUs, but keeping in mind, we're gonna have to figure out public funding for these public pieces of infrastructure that cost money. I also think, at the last meeting, we talked a bit about the INI study, and like, I think there is concern that our water reclamation facility is overtaxed, but I don't necessarily think it's the case because of new housing. I think it's the case because of leaky pipes. And so I think both things that you've said are true, and some of the leaky pipe, the old pipe problem is our capacity problem, not necessarily new housing. And also at some point, housing will impact the pipes also. So I just want to address, I still think it's cheaper to repair existing infrastructure than it is to build new, expensive, sprawly infrastructure.
No,
With no impact fees.
Right, yeah, they
Correct.
took away the
Um,
ability to.
But I would be interested, I don't know if, it's reasonable to take a break. I don't know if that's something he can do in
Yeah, we
like
can
5
do that.
minutes, but if he can't do it in 5, if he cannot do it quickly, then I'm fine with moving on without it. But if it's easy to do quickly, I'm happy to.
So what I could offer, just from a quick review of Municode, and our municipal code. It seems to me that the neighborhood commercial has existed at least since 2008.
Okay,
Because when I looked back at the ordinance, 2 recent ordinance changes to that area. The most recent or the oldest one that I can find from 2022. Neighborhood commercial was already existing in the code, and then the prior change to that section was from 2008. So it's existed at least since 2008. neighborhood commercial.
so I guess. In response to Commissioner Lyons and this idea of the business owner, I suspect that it's the case that some people are concerned about, workers having housing and housing not being used for short-term rentals. And also at the same time, I don't think that this is the solution to either one of those things. And I'm in favor of increasing housing opportunities for people in an area that's already been identified as denser development. I think this is a different conversation for me than, and looking at where these, these on that zoning map. These are areas that are around, it's already denser development. It's a different conversation than like just talking about R2 or R3 and the density in a neighborhood, but neighborhood commercial, I think sort of by definition, it's a higher impact on the land, and perhaps that's some of what you were getting at as well. So I'm in favor of, like, I'm open to that idea of not restricting housing. My concern would be that the business owner wouldn't live in it, and we just have empty housing. I'm sure that there's many people in the community that are concerned about short-term rentals. I also think that's a separate conversation that we can't do all the things in one code. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and this isn't the tool for working on short term.
Right, and like, even if it was, this is like 1 unit or 5 units, it's not like a significant impact to that particular policy. Yeah, that's where I'm at. Thanks, I yield.
We've got the information we needed.
Yeah.
You're good. Okay. I'll take a turn and then we can, see where we're at. I agree with Commissioner Lyons. I see this particularly for living space for a business owner. I think about business owners who have employees who they need housing for their employees, and why wouldn't you be able to house them in a unit that you might have in your business? That doesn't make sense that it would just have to be the business owner to me. I know there's a lot of businesses struggling for employees, and the reason that they're doing that is because they have no place for their employees to live. And if they can offer that, well, it's not always the best to live in the place in that you work and you live in your employer's housing, it still is an option. So I think that it makes sense that we were, I would be happy to prove that, and also just to add housing. It's mixed use, it could be housing and commercial use. But for me, then the rest of what we're looking at this evening is very just straightforward and what we have to do for state code. Those are my thoughts. I feel like we're coming to a bit of a consensus potentially. Does anyone want to? I'll say one more round of discussion, or feel free to. You can do a motion too.
I have when it's my turn.
Go ahead, Commissioner Lyons, and welcome to
Mhm.
Vice Chairman. Or are you going for a motion and we should?
No, I don't have a motion. I think. To me, there's still a little bit of ambiguity about what we're talking about. As far as these residential uses. I was thinking. Because of how this language starts of the residential unit. Related to a business. I was thinking we're talking about a mixed use building. It's a commercial building that has residential on it. I then just took a logical leap that the 5+ unit residential was also a mixed use.
Mhm.
And so I was thinking, okay, we're talking entirely about single buildings that have commercial and residential uses. But Director Stevenson pointed out that, if you look at the construction of the sentence,
Mhm.
the following residential uses are allowed, structures that include a minimum of 5 residential units. That's not a mixed use designation. That could just be a 5-plex residential. So I think we should, and I'm not positing an answer here. I mean, I might have an inclination that I'm happy to share, but I think that we should kind of decide what we're talking about in neighborhood commercial, what makes sense in neighborhood commercial. To me, the name of that zoning district indicates commercial. And so, in the spirit of that designation, it would make sense that we're talking about residential uses are allowed as part of a mixed use building that also has commercial uses. And that could include the 1 to 5+. If we don't do it that way, which I'm not saying is necessarily a bad thing, but if we don't do it that way, we're maybe saying you can do whatever multifamily housing units of 5 or more in neighborhood commercial. I think, and I'm just gonna go ahead and share my position. I think that for a neighborhood commercial, and to distinguish it from some of those other zones, it makes sense for our allowance of residential uses, have that be attached to a commercial use of the same thing. We don't have a ton of examples of that in Livingston, so well, actually, downtown Livingston.
Yeah, we do.
What am I saying? We don't have a ton of new examples of
Yeah.
that in Livingston, but we should figure out what we're allowing here. And my personal recommendation, I guess, because it just distinguishes it as neighborhood commercial, is that we tie it to a commercial use. So it would require it would say 1 or more. We don't have to say the number of residential units. All we have to say is that residential units are allowed when they are part of a mixed use or commercial building, something to that effect. And I would go.
And I'm just gonna clarify too, structures that include a minimum of 5 resident units has to stay because that's state law. So that,
But does state law define?
No, it
Finance?
doesn't.
Is
so
that,
state law says we have to have a 5-plex or more is allowed
okay,
in
That
that, right?
includes a minimum of 5 residential units, but a mixed use building could include at least 5.
So we're talking about 2
residential
things.
units.
One,
Yeah,
we have to use, the 5-plex has to stay because the,
If we say 1 or more, that covers the 5-plex. Right.
but that is residential only. We have to allow a 5-plex residential only.
Can we get
because it's safe
clarification on
code.
that?
Yes, and I would point you to, sorry, not to jump in here.
No,
No, but
please.
please go.
But to point you to page 83 in the packet, it's actually it's the last underline midway through the page. Multiple unit dwelling means a building designed for 5 or more dwelling units in which the dwelling units share a common separation. And it goes on, but it doesn't say anything about a commercial building. So in fact, a 5-plex or a 6-plex, similar to what exists on Love's Lane behind Albertsons, that is actually allowed in any commercial area. We can't restrict it to as part of a mixed use building.
But we can open up the commercial building to have
One.
more,
Well,
like,
actually,
yeah.
we don't have to stipulate how many.
right,
right,
Right.
and we could remove the business
we can
owner.
just allow it.
Okay, so that would be, just to, so that I'm clear, that would be two different types of development. Mixed use, with no, stipulation of how many units that has. So commercial and residential with no stipulation of the number of residential. Or a residential development of 5 or more units. I guess I'm not totally convinced, and it might be because I'm dense. I'm not convinced that we couldn't tie the 5 units to a mixed use. But I'm not interested in dying on that hill.
That would be letter A on 70. I mean, on 83.
Yeah, the top of page 83, really that sentence that starts on the bottom of 82, that's
With the mixed
3A.
use development.
In a municipality that is designated as an urban area by the United States Census Bureau with a population over 5,000 as of the most recent census, that is us. The city council or other legislative body of the municipality shall allow as a permitted use multiple unit dwellings and mixed use developments that include multiple unit dwellings on a parcel or lot, and then it's ferrets that out. But then you'll notice halfway down, they define mixed use development consisting of residential and non-residential uses, and then they also define multiple unit dwelling as the 5 or more, as I read earlier.
Okay.
So
That helps get it through my head, and so yeah, I'll just reiterate that I think allowing for mixed use of any variety of, actually, no, because 50% of the total square footage of the development.
That's the state's.
exactly.
Right.
In the mixed use development, yeah.
Limited to the first floor
Yeah.
of the buildings that are 2 or more stories.
Non-residential uses are less than 50%.
Right.
Of the first floor. So it's basically saying the first floor,
I know, I'm kind of confused on
the
it.
first floor
Okay.
should be at least 50% residential. That's what it's saying.
It's actually talking about the total square footage of the development. So the non-residential uses are less than 50% of
Oh.
the total square footage of the development and are limited to the first floor. And so they could be the entirety of the first floor on a 3 or more story building, because that would be less than 50% of the.
Okay,
area.
that makes more sense.
Yep.
Commissioner Lyons is still on the floor.
I guess I'm just like trying to figure out how we fit this in, like how we fit this into code. Because it sounds like the state requirements are accomplishing kind of what we were talking about already.
Yeah.
And so I guess what that really makes me, the question that brings to my mind is how do we feel Livingston differs from the state requirements? And the only way that we can differ is by making restrictions that still comply with the state requirements. Are we interested in making restrictions beyond what the state requirement stipulates? Does that make sense? The state requirement
To be
has
more
this mixed use,
I mean,
permissive.
More
thank you.
To be more
Yeah.
permissive than the state.
Right,
yeah. Well, certainly
and I
we could,
I
yeah.
don't see that. I don't see us on the consensus that I'm hearing isn't, it seems like covered by this state requirement. What we've been talking about.
Are you done for the moment?
Sure.
I wanted to let Vice Chair Newt.
I'm just reflecting on these laws and how we were ahead of the state and how the state came in and decided they know what's best for Livingston. And now it's making our jobs harder because
How do-
we're trying to make, what's that?
How do you really feel about it?
I feel like Livingston knows what's best for Livingston and that we don't need the state to tell us what to do. That's how I really feel, if you want to know the truth. I think the people that live here know what's best for the people that live here. That's my opinion.
What a novel thought.
I know, right? So we created this like mixed use before the state got busy and now I'm trying to figure out like, what's the difference really between neighborhood commercial and mixed use?
Yeah.
And as far as I can tell, it's modular homes, churches, schools, wholesale business, commercial greenhouses. And sexually oriented businesses. As far as I can tell, that's the difference between the two. However, I am interested on what I'm missing, particularly when it comes to density, because we have this density table. And neighborhood commercial is not in here because neighborhood commercial was not considered a residential zone until the state got busy. And so I'm wondering, that's what I'm trying to get my head around right now is like, how does neighborhood commercial density differ or is similar to everything else in our chart? And I'm sorry, I did not ask you this question before the meeting. But that's kind of what I'm thinking about, because perhaps that would help us understand like all of the things that commissioners have been saying, like with density and impacts of density.
No, your point actually is a very valid one that we had not, the residential density requirements table in section 30.41 does not include neighborhood commercial because it was not a residential district up until this point by and large. There was the single allowance there. And so, you know, I would say, to the extent that we got much farther in allowing, residential in the neighborhood commercial, that we would, as part of the zoning overhaul that is forthcoming, we would very likely add that column into the residential density requirements. But at this point, I would suggest, and I welcome any corrections anyone in the audience might have to offer from my staff, but neighborhood commercial actually will fall more along the lines of the central business district zoning, where there really is no minimum lot size to allow a residential unit. There will be restrictions on how many residential units are allowed in buildings potentially, you know, 1 to 5 or some other permutation there. But at this point, there would be no minimum lot size, again, similar to the central business district.
So where is that information like for a developer where they would, if it's not in this chart and somebody were to come in and wanna, you know, fall under the state requirements and build a 5-plex, how would we know like what the setbacks are and the density, et cetera, if it's not on this chart?
So it would be very much like the central business district in that
Would it just make a staff decision or is it written down somewhere?
No, so
that I don't know?
I was going to say, the residential notes for central business district exist in the bottom
Okay,
of
thank
table
you.
30.40 and neighborhood commercial. We're replicating that again, because up until this point, it really wasn't a residential district. And so, you know, you can see in CBD, you know, there is no minimum lot size and reading bullet 2 or sub footnote 2 here to that table. Any number of dwelling units may be established in an existing commercial building. No new residential structures may be built. And so there is no minimum lot size in the
Okay.
CBD. If you can
Mhm.
build it, you can do it.
So the reason why I'm bringing that up is if we're talking about 2, 3, and 4 units, and it's not tied to a commercial building, are we getting the intention from the zoning that we're wanting? Right?
Yeah,
Like, are we
my-
wanting? Yeah,
my recommendation was that for the 1 through 4, that we
Mhm.
are tying it to a
Mhm.
commercial building, because to distinguish neighborhood commercial from those other zones,
like from mixed use.
from mixed use or from R3 or
Mhm,
whatever.
mhm.
And I agree. I think that's a great question.
Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of what I'm thinking too, is like what's distinct about this versus any other zone, otherwise it's meaningless to
Yeah.
have
Mhm.
different
Oh,
zones.
we're just making it harder for developers to have to study the code to figure out that they can build anything everywhere.
Well, and like all of our zoning is meaningless if it means
Right,
nothing, if
right.
they all mean the same thing,
Yep.
so, I think that what Commissioner Lyon's saying is making sense to me when we think about the intention of neighborhood commercial. Or my understanding of the intention of neighborhood commercial versus mixed use, and also thinking about what's allowed in these spaces, and if you've been in these parts of town, like you know, you have some sense of what the difference is in the businesses that are in these, or what potentially would be the difference. We talked about mixed use versus highway commercial, for example. I think it makes sense. I just think it's like something to keep an eye out for.
And we have very little neighborhood commercial as it is, so it's so limited right now.
But also if it changes hands, thinking
Right.
where it is,
Right.
it's in established residential neighborhoods, so.
Mhm.
A lot of them are over in the part of town where I live, not so much where you guys live, right? So, it's like by the old school in the
Right.
middle of an established neighborhood, or on the north side, like surrounded by R2 development, which are these like, if you've been over there, it's a single family. It's very neighborhoody. So just thinking about the impact of that on, yeah, that's what I'm thinking about. I don't have anything else to say. I yield.
Anyone else? And then we'll go back to Commissioner Lyons. Just, I'm not missing anyone. We're good. Okay, Commissioner Lyons, go ahead.
Vice Chair Newts. I appreciate your point about the context of these places, and I'm thinking about when we were working on the future land use map on planning, the board formerly not the planning board. That we were really talking about trying to provide or allow for, we don't provide, we allow for commercial opportunities on the north side to help solve some of the traffic issues, right? And not require all commercial activity in Livingston to happen on the south side of the tracks. So I just appreciate where you're going with that and tying maybe what might be more feasible level of residential development, which the state is requiring us to allow, tying it to a commercial use helps to maintain that intent that we had when we were working on that future land use map of trying to allow for some commercial uses on the north side to be kind of local sub centers within Livingston and attract some daily trips that don't have to go. So again, all that is to say that I think gives credence to attaching the 1 to 4 to a commercial building. Because we're not saying that this is a residential zone, otherwise it would have been zoned as such. It's a commercial zone, and so to the extent that we can while still accommodating these changes at the state level, we should require that it be connected to a commercial use.
An existing commercial building.
Within the building.
Yeah, that's what I mean, yeah,
Or future commercial that's
Right.
not developed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
no, that's true too, where there's none, yeah.
So I'm gonna say, I feel like we're headed in a direction.
Yeah, Grant, get all that?
we're headed,
Oh my God.
Got that?
we're headed in a direction.
We're headed in some sort of a direction, all right? I think together we're headed in the same direction, potentially.
I think so,
I
yeah.
think we're maybe coming together. Would someone like to, offer a motion?
I think it
Or
should
do
be
we-
Commissioner Lyons.
Commissioner Lyons,
Yeah,
yeah,
you're gonna have to amend it.
Commissioner Lyons, I would attempt one too, but you,
Or can we send it back to changes, or what?
that's a fair question. Mr. Gager, could you give us some direction, please?
So I believe that the goals of the commission can be accomplished by us simply modifying on page 70.
Yep.
Footnote number 1 to the table. Perhaps if after the colon, instead of a single residential unit may be established within a commercial building to allow living space for a business owner, perhaps up to 4 or up to 5 residential units may be established within a commercial building to allow living space for the businesses. So it's really just kind of pluralizing both the number of units and that they don't have. to
And
be
taking
all
the
in one
owner
business.
requirement.
Exactly, yeah. So I don't know if that accomplished the goals, but
I'm looking at Commissioner Lyons, because I feel like for the business is not what I heard from you.
And I think, I don't know that. I guess we were talking 1 to 4 because. But I don't know if putting a limit on the number of residential units is necessary or makes sense. Because the proportion is stipulated in this new state regulation. And well, I basically think that's a separate discussion of do we want to like limit the number of residential uses? And I miraculously do not necessarily have an opinion on that. But 1 to 4, I don't think necessarily captures the conversation
Make an allowance for
for residential.
residential and commercial building,
Yeah,
period.
yeah. And those
The state
those
picks up
proportions
anything more.
are covered by the state statute. And when I read the state statute, I mean, the way that they've written it is just kind of how mixed use happens. Like that's the conventional mixed use development. To the extent that mixed use development is conventional.
Vice Chair News.
I must have a process, like a question. So if we didn't limit it and we phrased it the way Commissioner Lyons said, and a developer came in and they bought up a bunch of neighborhood commercial and they said, I just want to put one really big house on it. Would that be allowed?
no, single family residential is not allowed in the neighborhood commercial zone, or excuse me, 1 family dwellings are not allowed. in the
Okay.
neighborhood commercial.
So it would have to be something tied to a business or 5 units and or more.
It would need to be more than 2 units. It would have to be something tied to a business, yes, or something of 5 or more units.
Okay, okay, I'm just making sure I'm like following
That's-
all the things.
That's where I'm at.
Cause
That's
that's
the way I
what
feel.
we don't want to have happen, right? Is
Exactly.
R1 in a neighborhood commercial.
Right. The tied to a business language,
Is what,
I'm a little uncomfortable with.
The residential that you, right.
The building has to have a commercial component, it has to have a residential component.
right,
Tied to business kind of reminds me of this original language, which we all kind of didn't seem to be comfortable with.
I would say that what you're saying was my intention. There's nothing about who lives there
Right,
being
right.
tied to the business from my perspective.
Right.
Thank you for offering clarity.
I like that.
So should we ask Mr. Gager if he could synthesize that for us?
I think I can, again, going back to that footnote, number 1 on the bottom of page 70. I might offer after the colon, residential units may be established within a commercial building. And then we'll get to the semicolon and then have structures that include a minimum of 5 residential
Yep,
units.
that's the way I'm thinking.
Nailed it.
Okay. Will you say that one more time so one of us can actually make that? Thank you.
That out.
Yeah, and so we cross out a single, we add an S to units, and we cross out everything between building and the semicolon.
You want to make the motion? I think we should. Or do you want to make the motion?
Happy
Get
to.
it? Okay. Yeah. thank you.
Are we all good?
I like it.
It's ready.
Feeling good?
for the
I'm
motion?
on board.
Okay, I move to approve ordinance 3046 with changes to the footnote of table 30.40 list of uses. And that footnote should read: neighborhood commercial, only the following residential uses are allowed. A residential unit may be established within a commercial building. Semicolon, structures that include a minimum of 5 residential units.
Can I correct you? Instead of a residential unit, just residential units.
Residential units, thank you
Units,
so
yeah.
much. Thank you. With those changes to ordinance 3046, to amend the City of Livingston zoning code article 5, sections 30-4, 30.40, 30.41, 30.43, and 30.51 related to multifamily dwellings, 2-family dwellings, and accessory dwelling units, and to authorize the chair to sign ordinance 3046.
I have a motion. I have
Second,
a second.
man, hurry there, babe.
I think Commissioner Schwartz got that first.
It's getting late.
Okay, I know, hold on.
I need my cranberry juice cocktail.
Okay, we're almost done, folks. We got this. Okay, so we have a motion by Lyons and a second by Schwartz. And Mr. Gager, you have that motion, okay?
I do.
Okay. Any further comment? Do we have to go back up for public comment, do we? All right, we're going to a roll call. Roll call, please.
Chair Kale,
4.
Vice Chair Newt,
Or
Commissioner Schwartz,
Board.
Commissioner Lyons. Commissioner Willich.
Motion passes. All right. Thank you for the lively discussion. All right, we are moving on to city manager comments.
I thank you all. I had intended this to be a little bit more brief of the meeting, and so my apologies, but I look forward to working with you all in 2024 to continue moving the goals of the city and the community forward. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to city commissioner comments. Commissioner Willich, you're first.
Cool. I want to thank the people of the city of Livingston for trusting me to work for them for the next 4 years. And I am very, very excited to work with my fellow commissioners and move our city forward. I'm looking forward to this. It's gonna be a good time.
Thank you. Commissioner Lyons.
So. I was just reviewing, the National Weather Service's, summary of December. And it was the warmest December on record in the city of Livingston dating back to, I believe, the 1800s. That data's gone back. It was 9.3 degrees warmer than the average for the month of December. And that scares me. And on a lighter note, I hope everyone does their snow dances because we could use some fresh snow. Are you?
Commissioner Schwartz.
Want to welcome again, Mr. Willich to the commission. And Tori, thank you for taking the lead on that last ordinance. Your experience and expertise really means a lot to me, and I appreciate that. And thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Commissioner Newts for being chair for the last year, 2 years. Yeah, last 2 years. Well, time flies when we're having fun. So thank you. With that, I yield.
Thank you. Vice Chair Newt.
Not nothing. Happy New Year.
Yeah. I will just say again, welcome Commissioner Willich and thank you. Vice Chair Newt's really worked the last 2 years. Like I said at the beginning of the meeting, we've come a long way. under your leadership, and I truly appreciate it, and I feel like I learned a lot under you, so thank you very much.
Can I say it was way more relaxing to be sitting here? There, just,
You're looking at a little chill over there.
yeah, I mean, like, I'm remembering how relaxing it is to be not the chair. No offense.
Can't take it. And thank you to the rest of you for, putting me in this position. I hope that I can lead our meetings well, and, but thank you for that, for trusting that in me. And Happy New Year to all. And Commissioner Lyons, I think I had thrown down the gauntlet for, didn't we talk about a snow dance off? So we need to make this happen. Other than that, thanks all. We'll see you in 2 weeks, and may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. I'll play Mel.
Okay. I have a motion by Schwartz.
Second,
Second that.
I want to play shorts. Second.
Second by Newt. Okay, all right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So this Livingston City Commission meeting is adjourned at 8:04 PM. Have a lovely evening. Thanks, folks.
Yeah.
Give me